It's now time for The Journal, WBGU-TV's award-winning public affairs program, with your host, Steve Kendall. This is where your community matters. Local people, local issues.
Hello and welcome to The Journal. I'm Steve Kendall. Later in this edition, we're going to be talking about WBGU-TV's upcoming documentary on Neil Armstrong and his hometown of Wapakoneta as we celebrate the 50th anniversary of his first steps on the moon. We'll also talk with members of BGSU's College of Education and Human Development and their Project Impact program. But first of all, we're going to talk about, if you've ever thought about running for public office, this is your chance to kind of find out the ins and outs, the whys and the therefores. We have with us Dr. Melissa Miller from the Bowling Green State University Department of Political Science, and you're going to be presenting a seminar called Gotta Run. So let's talk a little about that and the whys and wherefores of running for office and why people should think about it.
Well, I'm really excited about this event. It's actually being hosted by the Institute for the Study of Culture and Society at Bowling Green State University. I am a research fellow there this semester. And one of my responsibilities as a research fellow is to host some kind of public workshop or an event, a seminar, if you will, that's related to my research. And as you know, Steve, and some viewers will know, I study elections and campaigns. Right. And so in consultation with ICS, we thought it would be a terrific idea to offer an event, a bipartisan event for anyone who is interested in coming, called Gotta Run, Taking the Mystery Out of Running for Office. And so it is a 90-minute workshop. It's on Tuesday, March 5th at Way Library in Perrysburg at 7 o'clock. I'm thrilled to be partnering with the League of Women Voters. Both the Bowling Green and Perrysburg chapters of the League of Women Voters were excited to get on board with me. And really, it's all about reaching those people who think, I might want to run. I'm excited about politics, or I think I can make a difference. I would argue it's also about if there are viewers out there who they have a neighbor or a friend that they think would be great. Hey, come to the event. You'll have all the tools you need to talk somebody into doing it, because running for local office is not nearly as overwhelming as people think it is.
Because I think people look at the process and think, wow, that's so complicated. It requires huge amounts of time, and I just don't want to get involved, but it isn't really that complex.
That's right. I think there are two big myths that I'll be talking about sort of as the event begins, and then turn to those nuts and bolts about how do you do it. One of the big myths is it's way too complicated. Well, I like to say, all right, you know, it's a little complicated, all right? But if you can, let's say, hook up your computer to your TV and stream Netflix, and you can figure out how to do that. You can figure out how to get your name on the ballot, right? Or for the old, the old school folks out there, if you have a TiVo system and you've ever figured out how to record a show because you're going to be out of town and you're going to miss it, you can figure out how to get your name on the ballot. So that's one big myth, that it's too complicated. Right. The other myth is that it's terribly expensive to run. And I totally understand where that myth comes from. We see high-profile presidential races. In 2016, the campaign spending topped $1 billion. Right. That's overwhelming to people, and that's what folks are familiar with. At the local level, you may be running, for instance, in the city of Bowling Green, for city council. Those wards, they're just 4 wards. So you're just trying to compete in a section of your town or city. So again, we'll be talking about some facts and figures about what does it take to run, and dispelling some of those myths, and then we'll get to some nuts and bolts.
Right. Yeah, because if you're running for a local office, it doesn't mean you have to spend any money at all, really. You can spend as much, within limits. There are limits, and there are, of course, donations, there are some regulations, that sort of thing. But you can do it fairly simply if that's what your goal is.
The only money you have to spend is for the filing fee, which runs in Wood County, as a for instance, $30 to $80. And $80, the more expensive filing fee, is if you plan to run for judge. So it is not prohibitively expensive to get your name on the ballot. And folks, what they do is they rely on their friends, their family, they get volunteers together. At the local level, you don't need to pay consultants. People win local races because they use the networks that are available to them. And so we'll be providing information about that. I'm also delighted we'll be having 2 guests that will be part of what I call a mini panel as part of the event. 2 successful local elected officials. We'll have Sandy Rowland, she's a Democrat from the Bowling Green City Council, and Eric Bennington, a Republican on the Perrysburg School Board. And as part of the event, we'll hear from them answering questions about things like, what do you wish you had been told before you ran that first campaign? And what was harder than you thought it would be? And what was easier than you thought? So participants will get a chance to talk to some successful local politicians, again, to dispel the myth that it's too difficult. There is a lot of enthusiasm. I know we live in highly polarized partisan times, but one of the upsides to that is people are interested and engaged. It's a good time to be thinking about running or coaxing someone to run and coming out on Tuesday, March 5th to see this event. It's hosted again by BGSU's Institute for the Study of Culture and Society with the League of Women Voters as partners.
Right. And in a lot of cases, too, in some races, there aren't enough candidates. There may only be, if there are 5 seats, there may only be 3 or 4 people running. So in a lot of ways, there's opportunity there to kind of just dip your foot in the water a little bit and get elected the first time and go from there. That's one of the things I think people look at too.
Exactly. And now I don't have data from 2018, but there was a great study out of the College of William and Mary, and it looked at state legislative races. So these are not exactly local at the city level, but they're not, statewide congressional. And do you know that in 2014, 57% of state legislative incumbents didn't have any challengers. They ran unopposed because nobody ran against them. And if we think about it from the democratic theory perspective, and here I'm talking small d Democrat, right? What makes a good democracy? Well, we elect public officials to speak for us and vote on our behalf in state legislatures. And in theory, this should work pretty well because they have to run for re-election. Of course, they'll want to win re-election, so they'll do a good job, as good of a job as they can representing our interests. Well, guess what? If no one's running against them, there is no built-in incentive to make sure you as the elected official are on your toes. So it's not good for democracy to have incumbents who are unopposed, whether they're Democrats or Republicans at whatever level. It's just good to get more people involved. And lastly, I'd like to say that Eric Bennington, who, as I said, will be part of this from the Perrysburg School Board, he said, you know what's great? If you win, you win. And if you lose, you still win. You've got your name out there. People know who you are. You're more likely to get invitations to serve perhaps on a local advisory board. And so you're going to, just the experience is a terrific one for getting to know your community, your neighbors, getting your name out there and opening up other doors for you, even if you don't end up on the winning side. But gotta run. This event is designed to help you figure out how to run and win.
Okay, well, great. Well, thank you so much for bringing us that information, and best wishes with that seminar, and hopefully it will recruit a lot of new candidates and people that want to get involved in the process. So thank you very much, Dr.
You're very
Melissa
welcome.
Miller.
Thanks for having me.
We'll have you back again because politics is part of what we do here.
Absolutely.
So it's great. Good. We'll be back in just a moment. Coming up, we're going to talk about WBGU-TV's documentary that we're going to do on Neil Armstrong in his hometown of Wapakoneta, Ohio, as we approach the 50th anniversary of the first manned moon landing. So back in just a moment here on The Journal. Thanks for staying with us here on The Journal. In our second segment, we're going to be talking about the fact that Neil Armstrong, of course, is from Wapakoneta, Ohio, well within our coverage area here at WBGU-TV. And one of the things that PBS offered to stations around the country was the opportunity to receive a grant to develop a documentary about Neil Armstrong. It's the PBS Summer of Space. Last year was a Summer Adventure. This is the Summer of Space. And of course, there's a lot of PBS programming around the moon landing that happened 50 years ago this year. With me, I have Lori Wilt, who's our Public Relations and Marketing Communications Specialist, and also Anthony Short, one of our general managers here at the TV station, who's been involved in working on the documentary. But first, Lori, talk about the grant and how that came about, because not a lot of stations around the country got this grant.
That is true. We were very fortunate to be one of 15 that were selected. I think one of the things that definitely was to our advantage is that our viewing area covers the hometown of Neil Armstrong. The grant came from American Experience. They're planning a pretty significant documentary to air in July Actually, it will be 6 hours, and it's called Chasing the Moon, and it will air on July 8th, 9th, and 10th. And then it will be played in its entirety on July 20th, which is the actual anniversary. Of the moon landing.
Right.
So to accompany that, they asked stations to come up with ideas for documentaries, short form films, could be online projects. It was really up to the stations to propose something that fit around their larger documentary. So we proposed doing something about Neil Armstrong, and like I said, we were lucky enough to be one of the recipients, and now we're getting underway on the project.
Yeah. Now, what is our plan for that? What exactly are we going to, what did we propose and what do we intend to do? I assume we're going to do what we proposed, right?
Well, yeah, I hope so. You know, we wanted to take a look at Neil's early life in Wapakoneta. You know, a lot's been done about Neil. You know, certainly there's been biographies, and just last year there was the feature film First Man. So, you know, he's had some other projects where he is the subject. But we wanted to take really a look at Wapakoneta and how it affected the town. You know, this was 50 years ago, so, you know, as time passes, it becomes more crucial to interview the people who were there when this happened. You know, Neil Armstrong passed away in 2012, and, you know, like I said, as time passes, you want to kind of get a feel for the people who were actually there and lived it.
Right.
So we were hoping to, you know, talk about what it was like that day in Wapakoneta. And then, you know, over the last 50 years, the town is still really focused on that and how that's affected the town.
Yeah, it's the home of the Armstrong Museum, which is, you know, it's a space museum focused primarily on the Apollo mission, but also has Mercury, because he also flew in the Mercury mission as well. So, and we're very fortunate that there we have a PAC board member who whose family knew the Armstrongs. And so they're helping us pull some people together that knew the Armstrong family and knew Neil specifically. And so I think we're going to, as Lori talked about, I think the focus is trying to take a look at Neil's life growing up in Wapakoneta, you know, because although I think looking at Neil, what his accomplishments were, and I mean, he's a very accomplished individual, but also in some ways very normal.
Right.
And so I think you know, watching somebody like Neil Armstrong grow up within a small community like Wapakoneta, and then and ultimately be the first man on the moon is quite a story when you think about it. And surprisingly, it's something that we haven't done.
Right. Yeah.
And I haven't seen it done anywhere else. And so I think this is a great opportunity for our station to provide sort of a backstory to Neil Armstrong. There's a story where they talk about Neil Armstrong. He actually got his pilot's license before he got his driver's license.
Right.
And the small airport where he learned to fly was several miles outside of town, so he'd ride his bike out to this small airfield, which was actually just a grass landing strip, and that's where he learned how to fly. And then when he decided to go to Purdue University, he flew to Purdue by himself and applied, and then flew back to Wapakoneta. So I think he was an extraordinary person, but also grew up in this Midwest town, just like a normal kid, like some of the rest of us.
Yeah, and stayed a pretty private person. I mean, as the first man to step on the moon, you think about that, he kept a pretty low profile, all things considered.
Absolutely. In this age of the Kardashians, and I'm embarrassed to say that, he was a man that came back from that. And whenever he spoke, and he did a world tour with the other two astronauts, and whenever he spoke about it, he always was thanking the people that helped him get there.
Right.
And not so much what he had done, but saying what a group effort it had been. The thousands of people that had built the Saturn rocket, that had built the Apollo spacecraft, that had built the suit that he used. He thanked all of those people, as opposed to saying that that he had done it. It was a group effort.
Now, as we approach what we're going to do with this documentary, what are some of the sort of preliminary steps that we've taken so far?
For us, one of the things is meeting with those people that knew the Armstrong family, that lived in Wapakoneta during the 1960s. And so actually coming up this Friday, we'll be meeting with that large group. And then after that, then we'll be meeting with them individually and recording their stories. And so it's sort of in some ways, it's a oral history of those people that lived in Wapakoneta during that time, and what they did. We're reaching out to his sister June is still alive, and so we've reached out to her, and we hope that she's willing to speak to us about her time in Wapakoneta and her time with her brother in Wapakoneta.
Sure. Yeah, because as I say, it's a small town. The house that he grew up in is still there. Some of those sort of benchmark pieces there, some of those locations are still there, some are not, because of the time that's passed. If someone's interested in contacting us to maybe become one of those people to talk to, that maybe we're open to that, I assume.
We absolutely are open to that. I mean, as with all the documentaries that we do on WBGU, we certainly are looking for funding to help us fund it. Luckily we have the grant, but the grant is sort of seed money to move forward, but we're certainly open to people that want to help and support the project. Those people that are aware or knew Mr. Armstrong or knew or lived in Wapakoneta during that time, certainly contact the station, use my name, let us know that you're out there. We're more than willing to contact you and see your viewpoint about how, I mean, many of us that were alive during that time, July 20th, 1969, I clearly remember where I was at and what I was doing. And as a small kid in the 1960s, I had a huge scrapbook that was of the space program.
Of the space program, sure.
And so for me, this is a really exciting project. I'm really excited about this.
Well, we look forward to it. Lori Wilt, Tony Short, thank you so much, and we'll look forward to that documentary about Neil Armstrong and Wapakoneta, Ohio, coming here on WBGU-TV. In just a moment, we'll be back with Project Impact. We'll have some representatives from the BGSU College of Education and Human Development talk about that project, and its community outreach as part of that as well. Back in just a moment here on The Journal. Thank you for staying with us here on The Journal. In this segment, we're going to talk about Project Impact, which is a program in the BGSU College of Education and Human Development. And I have with me 4 faculty members from the university: Dr. Tracy Husiak-Clark, Dr. Matthew Lavery, Dr. Joanna Weaver, and Dr. Christina Lavania. So thank you all for being here. Let's talk a little about Project Impact. Tell us what that's about briefly, and then we'll dig deeper as we go along.
Perfect. We're really excited. This is a federal Department of Education grant focused on collaborations with local K-12 partnerships, local K-12 schools, to increase high-need areas of professional teachers. So there is definitely a shortage of special education teachers, science and math teachers in the state of Ohio. So this grant has multiple purposes, but it's to help train teachers from the pre-service level up through their induction years, so their first 3 years of teaching.
Okay. And talk a little about then your involvement in the program, for instance, Dr. Clark. Dr. Weaver, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine, you're fine. Well, we're all co-PIs, so my specific expertise is in literacy. So, and literacy crosses all content, and so we're looking at, the language of the content with the pre-service, with the induction teachers, those teachers in the first 3 years, and providing that support. So I really, in everything I do, I'm looking at the understanding of the language of the content, of the career choice that they've made, and helping them and providing supports and professional development so they can be successful, and everybody working together to help them be successful.
Yeah, because obviously it's involving a lot of faculty members, and we're going to talk about the partnership part in a couple of minutes. Your role, Dr. Lavery?
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned the team, because we really do have a really, really strong team of faculty and partners that are working on this. And I'm really excited because in my role, I get to play with all the toys. Okay. So I'm working with a side to the technology integration, and so part of this project has allowed us to bring in a platform called Immersion that will allow us to have our teacher candidates teach to a virtual classroom of 5 student avatars, fully interactive. And it's a great opportunity to practice really challenging skills and challenging moments, because if they mess up, we can just sort of hit the reset button and start over, right?
Sure.
So there's some great opportunities there that we're very excited about. We're also incorporating some video coaching using a system called GoReact that allows us to timestamp our our comments directly on the video. So as they're watching, our feedback comes up and they get the feedback on their teaching. And then we're also incorporating digital badges so that as they go through these experiences, we can issue a digital badge as a micro-credential that will allow someone to verify those credentials and see what they had to do in order to earn that badge. So these technology pieces are really augmenting the work that we're doing, and it's very exciting.
Yeah, it sounds like it's much more complex than maybe it used to be, but also a lot easier in some ways because of the technology capability.
It's more complex on the front end, which makes it easier on the back end. Yes.
Okay. And Dr. Lervania.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So my role in the project, my primary responsibilities and focus is on program evaluation and reporting out to the Department of Education, the U.S. Department of Education, that we're meeting these benchmarks and doing the things that we promised we would do if we won this money. But we all, on the leadership team, all of us wear multiple hats. And so one of the things that's really exciting is, in addition to being part of responsible for the program evaluation, I get to have some fun doing some research as well. And I think everybody who's involved, all the faculty who are involved in the project, are really excited about developing and sustaining connections with our district partners, and then helping through our research efforts, helping our partners understand what's working and how we might make things even better and stronger. So it's really exciting. And part of my area of interest centers on emotional regulation in the workplace, and one of the primary foci for the project is social emotional learning. So there's a lot of nice overlap there that I get to learn some new things and maybe not play with the technology as much, but a little bit, so it'll be really fun.
Great. Well, you mentioned the partnerships. We're going to be talking about that in just a moment. Thank you so much. And as this unrolls, what's the timeline on this? Is this an ongoing?
It is an ongoing,
Okay.
It is a 5-year grant. So we're in our first year of our, so we're admitting our first cohort of students right now from our existing student teachers that are in our partner districts, and we will continue to enroll up to 350 pre-service teachers throughout the 5 years.
Good. Well, we'll talk about the partnership portion in just a second.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for being here, and we'll do a follow-up as this
Great.
grant
That
the
would be
program
wonderful.
unfurls. It sounds
Thank
very
you.
good.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll be back in just a moment. We'll talk about the partnerships involved in Project Impact here on the Journal. In this segment of Journal, we're going to talk about Project Impact and its partnerships. We kind of referenced that earlier. Dr. Uziak-Clark, talk about the partnerships aspect, because you have a lot of partners involved in Project Impact.
We have a large number of partners, and we're really excited about that. The main purpose of this grant is to develop good partnerships, good collaborations between the university and our K-12 partners. So we're working with 4 school districts, Perrysburg, Springfield, Toledo Public, and Toledo School for the Arts. And we're really excited about the advisory board committee we have. We have representatives from all of those partners, and we meet monthly at this point in time to make sure that we are meeting the needs of all of the partners and their interest as well, which is key to the partnership.
Yeah. And one of our guests in this segment, our other guest, is Troy Armstrong, Assistant Superintendent, Springfield Local School. It's Holland, Ohio, for those who may not know where Springfield Local is. We all do. Talk a bit about how Project Impact, the Springfield Local School's involvement, and what that's meant to your district.
Yeah, so for Springfield, we've had a long-standing relationship with Bowling Green State University for our pre-service teachers. But with Project Impact, we've been able to work together to provide that professional development for those teachers and for our own teachers, in especially looking at the area of those that we have a difficult time in filling positions. So mentioned earlier, math and sciences, as well as intervention specialists in the district. So having this partnership where we know the pre-service teachers will be with us and prepared to teach, they'll be high candidates for us when it comes time to hire for full-time positions. So we really look forward to continuing our relationship, but also strengthening the professional development of the students and our staff.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned existing staff. How do they interact with this particular project?
Yeah, so our existing staff members, teachers in the classroom, they serve as mentors to the pre-service teachers. So the old student teacher and the teacher I'm teaching in the classroom with. So our teachers being able to have those pre-service teachers in their classroom, one, brings new teaching to our classrooms, a new viewpoint to the classrooms, but it also then allows our teachers to learn from the pre-service teachers, but also learn from the professional development that's provided through the grant.
Yeah. Now, Dr. Clark, you mentioned the partnership aspect of this. What is sort of the oversight, the responsibility, the oversight group you mentioned, the people kind of sit on this board?
So what's most important with this grant is that we're not just deciding in a back room what's most important for what our students should be learning, that we're actually having conversations about what are the things that our K-12 partners are facing, what are the needs that the students in those districts are facing, and how can we better prepare and meet the needs more immediately. Change is slow sometimes.
Sure.
And so this allows us to have good conversations, it allows us to have frequent conversations and think about how we might plan better professional development that meets the immediate needs and then the needs that we see happening into the future, so that we're better able to meet those needs in a more impactful way.
Yeah, and the reception of, I'm sorry, go ahead, Dr.
No, I was just going to add that the partner districts, it's nice to see that all of us brought the same needs. When we sat around the table with the university staff and the partner schools, we all have the same needs that we in the areas of professional development, from social emotional learning. That's just one example that we all practice on a daily basis, but also come together to do so.
Well, I appreciate you both being here to talk about the partnership aspect. And as we've talked this, obviously we need to have your whole group back to talk more in depth, because obviously it's an incredibly important program and identifies those really specific areas that are needs in almost every school district. So Troy Armstrong, Assistant Superintendent, Springfield Local, thank you so much. And
thank you.
Dr. Uziak Clark, thank you so much. Bowling Green State University's College of Education and Human Development. You can check us out at WBGU.org, and of course you can watch us every week on WBGU-TV Public Television. We will see you again next time.